Hey there, fellow explorers of the weird and wonderful. It's your host, John Doe, back with another episode of Forbidden and Unveiled.
And I'm Jane Doe, ready to dive into some seriously strange stories.
You got that right. We've got some locations lined up today that'll make you question everything you thought you knew. UFO crashes amusement parks with some seriously creepy pasts. We're going on a wild ride.
Buckle up, everyone.
Before we get started, make sure you're following or subscribing to Forbidden and Unveiled so you never miss an episode. We appreciate you being here with us. Okay, let's kick things off in Aurora, Texas, back in 1897. Imagine a sleepy town suddenly in the spotlight because of a mysterious object just plummeting from the sky.
It sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi novel, but the Dallas Morning News actually published an article about it back then. They reported this unidentified object crashed into Judge J.S. Proctor's windmill, and the pilot was described as not of this world and was buried in the local cemetery.
Not of this world. Now that's a phrase that really gets the imagination going. It really makes you wonder about the stories that get passed down through generations. We're talking about an incident that predates the Roswell crash by 50 years.
Exactly. And just like Roswell, the Aurora incident is shrouded in speculation. But here's where it gets really interesting. A man named Brawley Oates bought the property in 1935, cleaned out the well where some of the alleged wreckage was dumped, and later developed severe arthritis. He believed it was caused by contaminated water from the well.
Okay, hold on. So we've got a potential UFO crash, a non-earthly pilot, and now a mysterious illness possibly linked to alien tech. This is like an X-Files episode.
It does, doesn't it? But we have to consider other perspectives, too. There's a longtime resident, Etta Peggs, who claims the whole thing was a hoax. She believes the author of the original article just completely made up the story to draw attention to the town, which was kind of dying out at the time.
It's always so fascinating how these stories become part of a town's identity, even if there's no concrete proof. It makes you wonder how much of it is truth, how much is embellishment, and how much is just plain good storytelling.
That's the beauty of exploring these mysteries, right? It's not always about finding a definitive answer. Sometimes it's about appreciating the different layers of history, folklore, and human curiosity that come together to create these captivating tales.
Well said. Speaking of captivating tales, let's shift gears from potential alien encounters to a location with a much darker and more earthbound history. Lake Shawnee Amusement Park in West Virginia.
Now, Lake Shawnee is a place where the past is almost tangible. It's an abandoned amusement park, overgrown, silent, but the remnants of its tragic past are still very much present.
It's not just about rusty Ferris wheels and crumbling buildings, is it? This place is steeped in a history that's both fascinating and unsettling.
Exactly. Before the park was even built, the land was the site of a brutal massacre back in 1785. Mitchell Clay, the landowner, lost his children in a raid by Native Americans. In retaliation, he and his men killed several members of the raiding party.
So the land is already carrying this heavy burden,
Yeah.
Before the first swing set is even erected. And then in 1926, it opens as an amusement park, attracting families and laughter.
Yes.
It's almost like a deliberate attempt to layer joy over such a dark past, isn't it?
It is a strange juxtaposition for sure. But the park's troubled history didn't end there. Over the years, there were reports of accidents and deaths, adding to the park's unsettling atmosphere. It eventually closed in 1967 due to failed health inspections.
Wow, it's like the land itself is rejecting any attempts to create happiness on its surface. And to make things even creepier, during construction work in the 1990s, workers unearthed 13 Native American skeletons.
It's a chilling discovery that adds another layer of complexity to the park's history. It forces us to confront the darker aspects of our past, the violence and displacement that often go unacknowledged.
No wonder Lake Shawnee has become a popular destination for paranormal investigators. Imagine walking through those abandoned rides, knowing the layers of tragedy that have unfolded there. It sends chills down my spine just thinking about it.
It's a place that really gets under your skin, doesn't it? And it's a great example of how the past can continue to shape the present, even in the most unexpected ways.
Absolutely. From a potentially haunted amusement park, let's travel north to a ghost town that's been left to whisper its secrets to the Alaskan wind, Portlock.
Portlock offers a glimpse into a bygone era, a time when canneries were booming and life on the Kenai Peninsula was rugged and isolated. The town was named after Captain Nathaniel Portlock, who sailed there way back in 1786.
It sounds like a place where time has stood still. What caused this once bustling community to become a ghost town?
Well, it's a classic tale of progress in changing times. When Alaska Route 1 was constructed, towns on the other side of the peninsula became more accessible, and that led to Portlock's decline and eventual abandonment.
So it wasn't a sudden event like a natural disaster or a plague, but a slow fade into obscurity as the world moved on. It makes you think about all the forgotten communities out there just swallowed by time and progress.
That's a great point, John. And it's a reminder that even the most remote places are connected to the larger forces of history and change.
It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? And it makes exploring these abandoned places even more fascinating. It's like piecing together a puzzle, trying to understand the forces that shaped these communities and led to their eventual demise.
Absolutely. And Portlock is a particularly intriguing puzzle piece because it's not entirely lost to time. There's actually talk of reestablishing it as a village, breathing new life into this ghostly relic of the past.
Wow, that would be an incredible transformation, wouldn't it? From a ghost town frozen in time to a vibrant community once again. It's a reminder that history is never truly over. It's constantly being rewritten and reshaped.
And that's what makes exploring these abandoned places so captivating. They offer a window into the past, present, and potential future, all woven together in a tapestry of stories and experiences.
Speaking of stories, our next destination takes us to a place with a truly dark and disturbing past. Poveglia Island, near Venice, Italy.
Poveglia Island. Even the name sends shivers down the spine. It's a small island with a history as dark as the lagoon waters that surround it. A place where the weight of the past is palpable. A place where the lines between history and legend blur.
Okay, so we've had aliens and ghost towns, but now we're talking about an island that's considered one of the most haunted places in the world. I'm getting chills just thinking about it.
It's a place that really captures the imagination, and for good reason. Poveglia has been a refuge, a quarantine zone, and an asylum, each chapter of its history adding another layer of sorrow and despair.
It's like a microcosm of human suffering concentrated on this tiny island in the Venetian lagoon. Tell me more about its history. What makes this place so unsettling?
Well, it all started back in 421 AD, when people fled to Poveglia to escape barbarian invasions. Over the centuries, a community grew, but in 1379 they were forced to evacuate due to warfare.
So the island was already steeped in conflict and displacement from its early days. That sets the stage for a pretty dramatic history.
Exactly. Then in the 18th century, Poveglia's story takes a truly dark turn. It becomes a quarantine zone for plague victims. Imagine being sent to this isolated island knowing you might never leave, surrounded by the sick and dying.
That's a terrifying thought. Isolation and disease, it's a recipe for despair. And this went on for years.
Yes, from 1793 until 1814, Poveglia was basically a dumping ground for those afflicted with the plague. The bodies were buried in mass graves, the soil just saturated with death and suffering. And as if that wasn't enough, in 1922, existing buildings on the island were converted into an asylum for the mentally ill.
This is getting more and more disturbing. It's like the island itself became a magnet for suffering. And what about the stories of hauntings and paranormal activity? Are those just legends, or is there something more to them?
The island is rife with stories of restless spirits, plague victims roaming the abandoned buildings, tortured souls crying out from the past. Some even claim that the doctor who ran the asylum experimented on patients and was eventually driven mad by the ghosts himself.
Okay, those stories are giving me serious goosebumps. It's like every corner of the island is saturated with suffering and despair. And what about the failed attempts to redevelop the island? You'd think someone would want to erase that dark history and create something new.
There have been attempts, but each one has been met with resistance. It's as if the island itself is rejecting any efforts to change its fate. It remains isolated, abandoned, a haunting reminder of the darkness that can linger in a place.
Wow, from plague pits to an asylum to failed attempts at redevelopment, Poveglia Island is truly a place where history refuses to be silenced. It makes you wonder if some places are just meant to be left untouched, their stories too powerful to be erased or rewritten.
That's a thought-provoking question, John. And it speaks to the complex relationship we have with abandoned places. Sometimes they serve as warnings, reminders of the darker aspects of our past.
Well said. From the haunting shores of Poveglia Island, let's journey across the Atlantic to a place where the line between reality and legend blurs. Summerwind Mansion, formerly known as Lamont Mansion in Wisconsin. This ruined mansion, perched on the shores of West Bay Lake, has a history that's as captivating as it is unsettling.
Summerwind Mansion. It's a place where stories intertwine, where fact and fiction blend together to create a tapestry of mystery and intrigue. The very name evokes a sense of unease, a whisper of secrets carried on the wind.
It sounds like a location that's tailor-made for ghost stories and chilling tales. What's the real story behind this ruined mansion? Is it truly haunted, or is it just a case of overactive imaginations?
Well, that's where things get interesting. The stories surrounding Summerwind are as fragmented as the mansion's ruins. Some claim that Robert Patterson Lamont, who allegedly purchased the mansion in 1916, fled in terror after encountering a ghost. Others whisper about the Hinshaws, a later couple who lived there, claiming that they experienced intense paranormal activity that led to a nervous breakdown and a suicide attempt.
So we've got ghostly apparitions, mental breakdowns, and suicide attempts. It sounds like a recipe for a horror movie. Is there any evidence to support these claims, or are we dealing with pure folklore here?
That's the tricky part. There's a lot of hearsay and conflicting accounts, which makes separating fact from fiction incredibly difficult.
Classic haunted house mystery, right? Lots of stories, but no concrete evidence. But that's part of what makes these places so fascinating, isn't it? The mystery itself is what draws us in.
Absolutely. And then there's the enigmatic figure of Raymond Bober, who claimed that the mansion possessed supernatural powers and was haunted by the ghost of 18th century explorer Jonathan Carver. He believed that Summerwind was a vortex of spiritual energy.
Wait, a vortex of spiritual energy. That takes things to a whole new level. But was he a credible source or just someone who liked to spin a good yarn?
That's the million-dollar question. Neighbors disputed his claims, stating that Bober never actually lived in the house. So was he a genuine believer or just a master storyteller? We may never know for sure.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. And to add a final layer of tragedy, the mansion was destroyed by fire in 1988. It's as if the mystery went up in flames, along with the physical structure.
It's almost poetic in a way, isn't it? The physical manifestation of the mystery is gone, but the stories remain whispered on the wind like embers from a dying fire.
Beautifully put. From a ruined mansion in Wisconsin to a place where the stars seem a little closer, our final stop takes us to Wycliffe Well, Australia, a location that once proclaimed itself as the UFO capital of Australia.
Ah, Wycliffe Well. A place that once embraced the extraordinary, attracting travelers with its alien-themed murals, paraphernalia, and even a Galaxy Auditorium restaurant. Sadly, it's now a shadow of its former self, abandoned and ravaged by termites.
It's a shame to think about this once vibrant hub of extraterrestrial enthusiasm fading into obscurity. It started as a humble water well in 1875, but by the late 1980s, it had transformed into this UFO tourist hotspot. What happened? Why was it abandoned?
In 2022, a major flood swept through the area, forcing its closure. What was once a bustling tourist attraction quickly fell victim to vandalism and the relentless march of nature. Those pesky termites really took a liking to the place, reducing it to a dilapidated shell.
It's amazing how quickly nature can reclaim what we've built, isn't it?
Yeah.
One minute it's a thriving tourist spot, the next it's being consumed by insects and the elements. It makes you think about the impermanence of everything.
It does, doesn't it? And it reminds us that even the most extraordinary places are vulnerable to the forces of time and nature.
But even in its abandoned state, Wycliffe Well still holds a certain allure, doesn't it? It's a place that sparks curiosity and invites us to ponder the possibilities of the unknown.
Absolutely. And we can't talk about Wycliffe Well without mentioning the conspiracy theories that surround it. Its proximity to Pine Gap, the U.S. military intelligence base, only adds fuel to the fire.
It's like a perfect storm of UFO intrigue. Strange lights in the sky, a remote location, and a nearby military base shrouded in secrecy. What more could you ask for in a good UFO mystery?
It's a recipe for endless speculation and fascination. Wycliffe Well may be abandoned, but the questions it raises continue to linger, much like the stories we've explored today.
And that's what makes exploring these abandoned places so rewarding, isn't it? They challenge us to question what we think we know, to embrace the unknown, and to appreciate the power of stories to connect us to the past, present, and future.
Well said, John. They're tangible reminders that history is never truly over. It's constantly unfolding, waiting to be rediscovered and reinterpreted.
So as we wrap up this leg of our journey, I can't help but feel a sense of awe and wonder at the sheer variety of abandoned places we've encountered. From potential UFO crash sites to ghost towns to a ruined mansion with a vortex of spiritual energy, it's been quite a ride.
It has indeed. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are countless other abandoned places out there, each with its own unique story to tell. And as we wrap up our exploration today, we want to leave you with a sense of curiosity, a desire to continue exploring the abandoned and the extraordinary.
Exactly. We've given you a taste of what's out there, but the real adventure begins when you start exploring on your own.
So where do you start? Well, I think a great place to begin is by looking in your own backyard.
Right. You might be surprised at what you discover lurking in your own community.
There could be an old factory, a crumbling mansion, or even a forgotten cemetery just waiting to be explored. Every town has its own hidden history, its own forgotten corners.
And who knows? You might even stumble upon a local legend or a ghost story that adds another layer of intrigue to the place.
Absolutely. Talking to older residents, visiting local libraries, and researching historical societies can lead you to incredible discoveries.
It's like being a detective, piecing together clues from the past to unravel the mysteries of the present.
And if you're feeling adventurous, you can even plan a road trip to visit some of the abandoned places we've talked about today.
It's an experience that will stay with you long after you've returned home. It's a way of connecting with the past, understanding the present, and contemplating the future.
And remember, exploring abandoned places isn't just about seeking out thrills or chills.
It's about respecting the past, learning from the mistakes of those who came before us, and appreciating the resilience of nature.
It's about being mindful of the impact we have on the world around us and the legacy we leave behind.
So as we conclude our journey today, we want to encourage you to keep exploring, to seek out the abandoned places in your own communities and beyond.
Listen for the whispers of the past, for they hold secrets, stories, and lessons that can enrich our present and shape our future.
And don't forget to share your discoveries with us. We love hearing about our listeners' own abandoned place adventures.
You can connect with us on social media or send us an email. We're always eager to hear your stories and see your photos.
So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep an open mind. The mysteries of the world are out there waiting to be uncovered.
And remember, even in decay and abandonment, there's beauty, wonder, and a story worth preserving.
That's a wrap on today's Forbidden Unveiled. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of abandoned places.
Make sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on our next adventure.
And until next time, keep exploring the mysteries of the world around you.